Mm-hmm.
Cool. Five, right?
Yes, sir.
Sounds good. Okay, welcome to my opponent and judge. Thank you guys for being here. I'm excited to debate this topic today. We're here to talk about whether the USFG should legalize prostitution, and I'm here on the affirmative. Let me define these terms for us real quick. The USFG is defined as the federal government of the United States. The legalized definition will be to make something that was once illegal permissible by law, and the definition of prostitution will be a derogatory term used for a transaction of trade of money for a sexual service. Move on to my first main point. Prostitution is a victimless crime. Now this is a quote from Wendy Garfinkel, who's a crime analyst from Broward County Sheriff's Department. Prostitution itself carries no victim as long as all parties are of age and consent. And that was on November 4th of 2016. Okay, and another quote from Billy John, PhD, who is an assistant professor of criminal justice at Furman College. Quote from him saying that that prostitution is the ultimate victimless crime. Now, my plan to legalize prostitution includes protecting women from violence, mandatory health checks, licensed areas for these women to operate, and recoining the term prostitution for sex workers, being that prostitute is a derogatory term. One second. Okay, so my next point would be to legalizing actually protecting all these prostitutes. And there are 1.2 million sex workers in the United States, and 90% of them depend on a pimp. And that's coming from proscons.org. So 90% of the 1.2 million prostitutes in the United States depend on a pimp. Now, the problem with this is that all these sex workers are depending on pimps, but many of these sex workers actually fear that they will be arrested if they report any violence or any exploitative clients or pimps. Now, that's a quote from Allison Bass, who is an assistant professor of journalism at West Virginia, and that was from 2015. Countries like New Zealand, Australia, Austria, Bangladesh, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, the list goes on, honestly. Colombia, Denmark, Ecuador, France, Germany, Greece, Indonesia, Netherlands, all of these countries have legalized prostitution. Prostitution is actually is widely known as the oldest profession to exist to this day. Now, that's I don't have any sources for that. That's just general knowledge. Prostitution's been around since the Hebrews wrote about it. Prostitution is here, will be here, and keeping it illegal does not stop it from happening. There are about 42 million prostitutes worldwide. So once again, illegalizing prostitution does not stop it from happening. But what it does do, keeping prostitution illegal makes the job very dangerous for these prostitutes. The only prostitution itself carries no victims. As long as all parties are of legal consent and age, prostitution itself carries no victims. The victims are from when these prostitutes are left unprotected, unguarded, and they are they are exploited by clients. They tend to be raped. They're robbed of their money. They're drugged as well, and this occurs only because the profession itself is illegal. So once again, keeping prostitution illegal is actually hurting all these women. Legalizing it is a plan for protecting women against violence, and it would make the profession a lot cleaner with mandatory health checks. These women would be more protected as they wouldn't have to depend on a pimp. They would have licensed areas to operate and work at. And we aim to rename the word, or to recoin the idea of a prostitute and change the name to a sex worker. If I have given enough points that we should legalize prostitution, then I should be winning this debate. Can I get a pen real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you.
Right here.
Oh, I stay up there for the cross-check?
2-minute cross-check. You guys ready?
Time starts now. Do you believe women should be treated as objects?
No, I do not.
Do you believe rape should be legal?
Do I believe rape should be legal?
Yes.
No, I do not believe rape should be legal.
Do you believe in gender equality?
I believe in gender equality, yes.
Do you think prostitution is a choice in the status quo?
Prostitution is most definitely a choice. From the way I define it, it is definitely a choice. Like I said, I define prostitution as long as prostitution was a derogatory term for a trade of money for a sexual service.
Fantastic. How would you legitimize your plan for protecting women from violence? How exactly would you go about protecting women from violence?
Well, the decriminalization of prostitution protects women from violence. I made that very clear.
How would you license these women?
Well, these licensing would tie in with our mandatory health checks.
And how would you go about these mandatory health checks? Would you use health cards that are currently present?
Yes, we could use that.
And so does this mean the prostitutes will be zoned and taxed?
Zoned and taxed. We have not discussed profiting off of them now.
Well, if prostitution is legal, that means by definition that those participating in it will be taxed. Is that true or not?
I'm not aware of the law.
All right. You mentioned many countries, including Denmark, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And once again, I just want to reiterate, you do believe prostitution is a victimless crime.
Victimless crime, the ultimate victimless crime, actually. And that's not a quote from me, but that is a quote from Billy J. Long, who's a PhD. He has a PhD, and he's the assistant professor of criminal justice at Ferrum College.
Okay, that will be all. Thank you. Is everyone ready? All right, 6 minutes. Time starts now. Brief roadmap before I begin. I will be going over my opponent's case and refuting his points, and then talking about my disadvantages. Time starts now. First, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. Judge, opponent, I am looking forward to this wonderful debate. Now, I'd like to start off by agreeing with all my opponent's definitions and mention that he did not have a criteria or a type, so I'd like to establish that real quick. The criteria being gender equality, and the type being policy, based on the fact that the resolution says should legalize prostitution. My opponent does have a plan, and I will address that as I go on. So first, he talked about prostitution being a victimless crime, and he said there's no victim, and he talked about an age of consent. However, as if we look at prostitution now, women go into prostitution before there is an age of consent. So in essence, their first chance of being a prostitute is not sex, it is rape. He talked about how, once again, prostitute is the ultimate victimless crime, and as I have stated already, those victims are the prostitutes, and I will delve into that in a little bit. Now, I asked him if he believed women should be treated as objects. Of course, he would say no, and rape being legal, he said no again. He agrees in gender equality, and he believes prostitution is a choice. Now, I will delve into why that last answer is completely incorrect in my disadvantages. Second contention, he said many sex workers fear arrest, and he talked about Denmark. Now, I'd like to mention something about the Dutch government, Judge. The Dutch government legalized prostitution in 2000. At that time, only 5% of prostitutes registered for taxes. The reason? Because they didn't want to be labeled as a whore. Julie Bindel, Justice for Women, quote, said, "This was a calamitous social experiment," and most of these governments are actually redacting their legalization of prostitution in the span of about a decade. Now, he talked about how it's the oldest profession and how being illegal makes this job dangerous. How this, once again, he talks about prostitution being a victimless crime. However, this kind of contradicts himself, because if illegality makes the job dangerous, then how, Judge, is prostitution a victimless crime? Because victimless, as I believe to mean, means that there is no danger because there is no victim. So he contradicts himself in this statement. He talks about how legalizing this would protect women against crime. However, he just said it protects women against crime. He didn't offer a way to protect women, how, for example, the police would do this, how the government would go about doing this. So his plan is a little flimsy, and I believe that he has not elaborated enough on how he would go about through these things. Moving on to my disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, violence against women. Subpoint A. Violence against prostitution debases men by allowing them to assume a woman's body is theirs for sexual pleasure. Subpoint B. Legalization condones the humiliation of prostitution and absolves any who inflict these egregious mental and physical wounds against these women. Rachel Moran, I quote, once again a part of the Women Association, says that this is an agonizing insult against women. Subpoint C. Prostitution involves the crime industry, has ties to gangs, drugs, and street violence. Subpoint D. This is a violation of basic human rights. There is a media portrayal versus the reality. The media portrayal portrays prostitutes as something from the Julia Roberts movie Pretty Women. This portrays prostitutes as someone happy, someone who goes about doing their job. However, the reality is that these prostitutes are hunted, dominated, harassed, assaulted, and battered. This goes against all ideas of gender equality we have in our society today. This is a quote taken from Kate Pettigo, an author of Prostitution, a Victimless Crime. That is her book. Now, subpoint E. Violence is the nature of the sex industry, and the impact of this first disadvantage is that legalization would essentially make the government proponents of female devaluation, and this is not something we want in a society of gender equality, which is the criteria given today. Disadvantage 2, gender equality / age of consent. Subpoint A. This obstructs the idea that a woman's body is her own and should be done what she wants to be done to it. Women enter prostitution before an age of consent for some women, and this obviously makes their first sexual encounter rape, and obviously rape is not something we stand for in this society, as my opponent has agreed for. Now, the impact of this would be the legalization would essentially mean that every young boy would learn that women are objects to be bought and sold, once again, completely against the idea that the criteria of gender equality. Moving on to our third disadvantage, life ethics and morality. Subpoint A. It's a myth that prostitution is a choice, so my opponent said yes. However, once again, it is a myth. And the reality is that women see almost no alternative. By legalizing, we would perpetuate the idea of sex for money being a valid ideology. Women go into prostitution for the most part because they see no alternative, they see no other way out of their situation of poverty or mistreatment. Subpoint B, legalization. Legalization would mean prostitution as a genuine choice for money for women, such as a secretary or a waitress. This diminishes the chance of women improving their lives in the future, and they will be stuck in this position as a prostitute because it is legal. Subpoint C, quote from Joe Vargas, a policeman. He says, once again, this work is not like Julia Roberts' Julia Roberts' Pretty Women. This essentially goes against the idea of the reality, which is that prostitution degrades and dehumanizes its participants. Subpoint D, sex for money is bad for women at every level, including morality and ethical. Subpoint E, my opponent talked about health cards, using health cards to check these prostitutes. However, the truth about health cards, Judge, is that they're unreliable. It takes about up to 2 to 3 weeks to return the health card. And in this time, the prostitute could have sex with someone who has an STD or who has a potential problem, and this would not be reiterated in the health card check. My last subpoint is my last point is human trafficking. This last disadvantage, human trafficking. Sex exploitation of girls stands in the center of the human trafficking industry. By legalizing prostitution, essentially we would make a legitimate front for organized crime. Judge, this is not what we want. I'd like to end with a quote. Prostitution is a euphemism for rape incidents that the victim and economy profits from. This is from Makokama Mokoana, an essay on altruism. Thank you, Judge.
Cross-ex, 2 minutes.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. I really only have one question for you. So you said that I believe you gave a statistic as well as to the prostitutes being beaten, raped, and all sorts of things happening to them. Who is the one doing this? Who are the people?
Who are the people doing this?
Yes.
Obviously, the people who pay for the prostitutes.
So the clients?
Yes.
Would you also agree that the pimps are also a part of abusing the prostitutes? That,
Of course. The
Okay.
pimps are part of the client industry.
Okay, perfect. That's it. Yeah, how much time do I have for this one? Okay, so I'm going to start off by thanking my opponent for agreeing on my definitions. He did say that he agrees with my definitions, but one of my definitions was for prostitution was that one second, let me read it again. Prostitution is a derogatory term for a transaction of trade of money or sexual service, and I mentioned that this prostitution can only occur should only occur when both parties are of legal age and consent. So prostitution with the age of legal consent. So that right there should negate anything he said about statutory rape. I define prostitution as a derogatory term for a transaction of money for a sexual service with both parties of legal age and consent. With his remarks on Denmark, that is just one of the 16 countries that I named. And the legalization actually negates the crime that it's happening. So he mentioned that all this horrible stuff is happening to these prostitutes via the client industry, which includes people paying for it and the pimps as well. The legalization negates any of that happening. The legalization gets rid of the pimps, which 90%, like I stated, 90% of prostitutes are dependent on these pimps. The legalization gets rid of that. There would be no pimps, and the clients would not have this leeway to do whatever they want with these females. There would be sanctions on them. So that also negates his point that all this horrible stuff is happening to him because of the profession. It is because that it is illegal that's happening to him. The legalization would get rid of this, and it's not even something that. And that's just general knowledge. If it was legal, there would be more sanctions on it. Therefore, it'd be more protected, and you wouldn't be able to do whatever you want with a prostitute. And as far as you mentioned, the children, it's up to parents to teach morals to their kids, and no, we don't have to teach sex workers in school. You're not going to see sex workers walking around schools. It is definitely up to parents and not society's laws that need to be changed to teach kids morals. And to his point that if it was made legal, it would be difficult for these women to transcend, to go higher in their careers. You can always quit. If it was legal, it would be another job. You can always quit. He said it would be hard to get out if it was legal. I feel like that's contradicting. It's hard to get out right now. Like I said, 90% of these women are dependent on pimps. And these pimps are, and my partner agreed on me that these pimps are the people that are beating them. These pimps are the people that are threatening their lives, and these women are scared to go against these people. It's hard to get out right now, so that statement was also contradicting. So with his points contradicting himself, I should be winning this debate. Judge ready? Opponent ready? Alright, 5 minutes, time starts now. Alright, first I'd like to mention the most important fact of this debate so far is that my opponent has dropped all of my arguments. He did not mention violence against women, he did not mention gender equality, age of consent, he did not mention life, ethics, and morality, and he did not mention human trafficking, so therefore all of those arguments should be extended throughout the flow sheet, and they cannot be refuted up to this point because I would have no choice. I would have no chance to re-refute after my opponent speaks in the last speech. Now, moving on to his refutations. He said, once again, prostitution is a derogatory term, and he defined it as those who work
those who prostitute themselves after they are age of consent. I would just like to broaden this definition really quickly, just to include all of those in the status quo that prostitute themselves, and this includes little girls who are below the age of consent. And once again, I'd like to reiterate that they are raped. Now, he talked about Denmark, how this was one of many. However, yes, Denmark is one of many, and they are one of many who are reiterating their idea that they need to redact this choice of legalization for prostitution. Once again, I'd like to state that only 5% of these prostitutes registered for taxes when prostitution was legalized because they did not want to be labeled as a whore. Now, he talked about how if it was legal, there would be more sanctions. However, Judge, he has not provided a way for there to be more sanctions. He has not provided any explanation as to what these sanctions would be, and his plan, once again, is flimsy in my opinion. He talks about how it's up to parents to teach these morals to their kids. However, the truth is, Judge, not every parent is perfect. In fact, some parents are prostitutes themselves. Now, we cannot expect these parents to teach these morals to their kids. We need to expect society to teach these morals to their kids. And if we legalize prostitution, I'd like to reiterate the fact that young boys would be taught that women are objects to be bought and sold. Is this something that we want for our male generation? Our male generation, as it is already biased and chauvinistic. We do not want them to believe that women are objects to be bought and sold. This would only increase the disparity between women and female and male equality, and that completely goes against the idea of gender equality that we have set as the criteria today, Judge. He talks about how they can always quit their job if it's legalized, and that is not what I was talking about in my argument. I was saying that it diminishes the chance of women improving their lives, because women who go into this secretary or waitress position, they tend to stay in that position, and they tend to not reach out and reach to more chances where they can better their lives. And if we made prostitution legal, that would add another position that women essentially go into and where they cannot find a way out. Once again, talking about his plan with the time that I have left, he says he would like to protect women from violence, and he has no way of doing this. He would like to issue health checks, and I asked him if we were to use health cards, and I've already established the health cards are unreliable. So once again, that's part of his plan falls flat, and he said he would like to redefine prostitutes as sex workers, and I guess I agree with that part of his plan. It doesn't really do anything for or against anyone, I believe. With the time left, I will reiterate the arguments that my opponent dropped, which was all of them. Once again, argument 1, disadvantage 1, violence against women. This debases men by allowing them to assume a woman's body is theirs for sexual pleasure. This goes against the idea of gender equality that we've established today, and that is not something we want in our society. Legalization condones the humiliation of prostitution and absolves any who inflict these egregious mental and physical wounds, Judge. This is a quote by Rachel Moran. She says this is an agonizing insult to women everywhere. Prostitution is a violation of women's basic human rights, and media portrays prostitution as something that it is not at all. Prostitutes in the status quo are hunted, dominated, harassed, assaulted, and battered, and my opponent has offered no way to counter this. He only says he's going to protect women from violence. Is my opponent going to go out and protect all prostitutes from violence, or is the police going to do it, because he has not provided a way of actually doing this? He also mentioned how with legalization, the pimps would no longer be there. I'm not sure how this correlates, because would this just mean that the pimps disappear? Is this magic, Judge? No. The pimps would still be there, and they would find a way. Some guns are legal. I'd like to mention this analogy before I end. Guns are legal, however, there's still a black market for guns. If prostitution was legal, and if my opponent had provided a solid plan to make prostitution legal, there would still be a black market, and he has not provided a way to counter this black market. He has not provided a way to successfully legitimize, license, and medically inspect these people. And he did not mention anything about zoning and taxing these individuals, as well as drop my arguments, Judge. That is why you should vote for me in this debate today of gender equality. Thank you.
I'd just like to point out that there were no sources for the countries that have taken their lawmaking back on prostitution. I believe so. So that in itself is kind of flimsy. No one is telling these kids no one is telling these little boys that women are objects. I feel like that is a major dramatization. Guns are legal, but not every kid that believes that guns are right or guns are good. In fact, it might be the opposite. Millennials have been turning their backs away from guns, even changing laws that guns, trying to make them illegal. And to say that the health cards wouldn't work, that the health cards are faulty, I believe his point for the health cards being faulty was that there was a 2 to 3 week shipping period for it. That doesn't feel that strong either. And the pimps are the ones committing the real crimes here. So for the pimps are going to disappear. Yes, they will be gone because they are the ones making the real crimes here. Once again, the actual prostitutes within the age of consent. Within the age of consent are just making a transaction of money for a sexual service. They are not committing a crime here. The ones that are committing the crimes here are the clients that beat and rape the women, and the pimps that also beat and rape, drug these women. And once again, this is only happening because prostitution is illegal. So for him to say that I do not have a plan, the changing the law is the plan. The fact that it will be legal gets rid of all of this, and will emphasize that the pimps are the ones committing the real crimes here. If I approve that we should legalize prostitution, then I win this debate.